I was intrigued by spiritualism from a young age. At the age of 13, I had my first out-of-body experience, which involved sitting on top of my own body and seeing it. My out-of-body experiences persisted after that, ranging from horrifying to wonderfully strange. I wanted to quit since having so many was uncomfortable and nasty, but it never happened voluntarily. I had no control over it. In my never-ending quest to understand more about God and alternative healing methods, I became fascinated by a diverse spectrum of spiritual traditions. Angels interested me at the time, so I attended a talk on the subject one day. Whenever you need to summon your angel, call him 3 times, and he will definitely listen. The speaker, an angel expert, mentioned something remarkable. Based on my birthday, I discovered in an angel book that my guardian angel's name is Miraculous, which made me very happy. That expression left a positive impression on my mind. A few months later, I had my second child delivered via cesarean section. I had a strong allergic reaction, maybe caused by the anesthesia, which resulted in considerable itching, particularly on my face. I experienced nausea and vomiting following the morphine-based anesthesia, but the doctors told me it was not life-threatening. That night, I had a dream that was similar to an out-of-body experience in which I saw a group of people pursuing me while I slept. I was about to die, and I was afraid. I invoked my guardian angel 3 times, using what I had learnt during my heavenly lecture. Suddenly, a dazzling light, my guardian angel, rose on my right side. Wow, he arrived when I phoned him. It worked. Thought in wonder. However, I felt awful shame right away. I knelt down, covered my face and head, and wondered, oh my God, what have I done? Summoned an ethereal entity to assist me with my mundane difficulty, and he's now stuck here with me. His brightness is so brilliant that I can't even look at him. Refrained from glancing at him as a display of humility, because I was humiliated. Next, he said something that would stick with me forever. Came here because you called me, not to judge you. His voice was so comforting, tolerant, and compassionate. It is not necessary that you look at me. You only have to do the other side. I'd never heard a more significant sentence than this one. His voice, with its gentleness, kindness, and lack of judgment, provided me with a new perspective that was stunning. It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted off my shoulders. I felt caressed, loved, and not judged. His affection surrounded me in ways that words cannot convey. I felt a weight removed from my shoulders, which was the most amazing aspect. I felt as if I had entered a domain of unrivaled happiness, pure love, and heavenly bliss, unlike anything I had ever experienced on this planet. I love everyone else just as much as I love you, he revealed afterwards. Even if they were the most awful people on the planet, I would still love them dearly. His lack of judgment became instantly apparent upon his arrival, which shocked me. To me, loving the worst person with that much love represented the zenith of love he could accomplish. However, his admiration had no bounds. The concept of love, particularly the type I had only heard about in Earth's language, may now sink in. The actual love had finally lodged in my bones. There was no sickness, trouble, or tension. Therefore, I didn't feel the need to eat while I was there. It finally dawned on me. Love might cure any ailment. My belief in the efficiency of love as medicine was a revelation. Previously, I had relied on spiritual activities to find a cure for my physical issues. I lost all memory of my past, present, and future selves, including my loved ones. I felt as light as a love bubble floating in the air. I decided to stay there indefinitely because I didn't want to go. You must return. This is not your time, the light informed me. What you started isn't done yet. The prospect of having something to do, highlighted by the bright light, intrigued me, but I didn't want to go back. Then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was on Earth with 2 sons, and they relied on me. Sought advice from the light on how to return, but each time, the horde of enemies retaliated. His next directive was to go following that direction, which was followed by a pointing gesture. Without a doubt, I felt perfectly safe. It was then that I knew that love, light, and power were the most powerful forces in the universe, and that no amount of bad that I could imagine could possibly compete with love. Returning gladly to my body, I followed the light's path. I do my best to convey my experience whenever the opportunity arises and the conditions allow, since it was the most fantastic event of my life, and I will never forget it. I believe it is only appropriate to tell others about my experience because, according to what the light told me, what occurred to me also happened to everyone else. Many thanks. We'll now go on to our second encounter, which concludes our first story. My marriage had only been a few years. I was 32 weeks pregnant with our second baby, and we already had a beautiful 16-month-old daughter. Already, the marriage was difficult. We were always on the go because of ministry, and everyone had an opinion on how we should live. Behind the scenes, there was chaos, but no one knew. Detonation in my stomach felt like the first shock. My head smashed on the bathtub as I tumbled. It was my responsibility to stay alive until they could deliver my baby, and I recognized right immediately that I would die if I didn't. My husband asked if it was good to call an ambulance after I told him I was about to die. Unfortunately, our little town hospital did not have a neonatal intensive care unit, NICU, for our newborn. I spent several hours in the hospital while doctors stabilized me and investigated the cause of my appendix explosion. After finding that I was dangerously ill but generally stable, they sent me to a university hospital. Passed out several times in the ambulance. Odd, calming voice seemed to be God communicating to me. When we got at the second hospital, I had septic shock. While I was in the throes of my most agonizing anguish, I felt neither alone nor afraid. All the while, I felt as if God was speaking to me directly. I pushed myself with dogged determination until my death. It had been 11 hours since my appendix ruptured when they finally placed me on the operating table. The surgical team's attempts to intubate me, as well as their yelling at me to stay with them, remain fresh in my consciousness. However, when I asked God for a response about my family's safety, He said they would be fine. God's words. As a result, I released it with joy. Long before my death, the torment had passed. When I entered their presence, I felt an overwhelming sensation of veneration. The only color that could describe them was the purest, most immaculate white. I couldn't believe my eyes weren't irritated. God blessed me with peace that exceeded my wildest aspirations. Our chat felt like it lasted for hours, yet it was just a few minutes in Earth time. They told me they loved me. They remarked how happy they were to be in my presence. Despite my protests that I did not want to return, they told me that I would have a long and tough life on Earth. My life aim was to impart optimism to everyone I met via love, peace, hope, and acceptance. We talked about how they loved me no matter what and accepted me unconditionally. I happened to see my mother in the waiting area at the same time. She sobbed and begged that I would be okay. They informed her that I had died, but they had managed to resurrect me. My spouse left to get a snack and was never seen again. Their dress, words, and ideas were all obvious to me. I felt perfectly at ease, so my mother's fear seemed unusual to me. I was really angry when I awoke in the hospital. I had to relearn how to do things like use the restroom since I had double pneumonia, was allergic to my antibiotic, needed 2 blood transfusions, and was generally sick. To my astonishment, my vision and hearing were very clean. My glasses were useless for a few weeks. My surgical site was only fixed with retention sutures, and the dressing was laced up like a boot due to the severity of my poisoning. It was critical that they clean it periodically. eventually met the surgeon who saved my life. I expressed my rage at being returned to him rather than thanking him, as my mother had done. Being with God transformed me permanently. It took me decades to regain my bearings after having all of my beliefs called into question. Feeling love was a process for me. I was scared of the suffering that love would create, because God had warned me that my life would be long and hard. My second daughter's eventual diagnosis was holoprosencephaly. Her doctor determined that she was not compatible with life. I had a difficult time adoring her with all of my maternal love since I knew she was going to die. I had gone head over heels for her by the time she died. We were able to prepare for her demise. The prospect of death was a regular issue in our chats. On the night she died, I comforted her that there would be no darkness in the afterlife since she would be with God, Daddy, and me. Between the two of us, she was cuddled up in bed. Nobody spoke, and the lights were darkened. She suddenly looked up at the corner of the room and smiled brightly than I expected a newborn would. She then departed. She recovered in the hereafter, and then our sorrow began. That acceptance and serenity remain with me today. I used to be a really fundamentalist Christian, but now I prefer spirituality. My 30-year marriage has ended in divorce. My entire church and the majority of my friends supported my ex-husband, but now I'm part of a new group of friends that are more like family. What a lovely life it is, despite all the difficulties. This finishes today's events. Please, as always, share your opinions with me in the designated space. Take care till we meet again, and may you always be blessed.